Good evening. I'm Paul Fredette, and with me here is my wife, Karen. Together, Karen and I have been serving hermits and religious solitaries around the world through Ravenspread Ministries, which we began here in the mountains of western North Carolina in 1997. Tonight, we would like to share with you, give you a window, so to speak, into our ministry, to share with you why we think it's important to support and to affirm those who've chosen to live in solitude for spiritual reasons. Over the past 16 years, Karen and I have encountered so often caricatures, prejudicial images of hermits as strange, wild-eyed recluses, eccentrics who dress oddly and behave oddly, people who rightly deserve to be ignored and avoided by intelligent and rational people. But during those same 16 years, our personal experience, Karen and I both, has been a very different picture. Actually, down through the centuries, all the great civilizations, the major religions, have known and respected, cherished, and at times have even celebrated those who chose to live lives of silence, solitude, simplicity, and prayer in order to live more completely in the presence of the holy, in order to immerse themselves in an intense and undistracted relationship with God. Karen, we began our book, Consider the Ravens, on contemporary hermit life by considering this exact topic of what hermits look like, didn't we?
Yes, in fact, the title for our first chapter was Hermits, Psychotics or Sages? And we explored that question. And I would ask you, what image comes to your mind when you hear the word hermit, just out of the blue? Is it a crotchety old bachelor who never speaks? The neighborhood crank that you wish would move away? Or maybe that witchy old widow who's always peering out behind the drapes and never letting you see herself? No, our image of a hermit is much different because we have been in touch with hundreds of them. Not directly, not physically, but through contact, through email, through letters, and even by phone. Paul has an image of a hermit that I think everybody would enjoy, and we know he turns up in every newsletter. He's a cartoon, a hermit brother who is called Would-Be Hermit, WOOD, capital B, Hermit. And he indeed has the wispy beard and the patched robe and the bare feet. And he is the caricature of what most hermits are not. But he is an enjoyable little fellow, and we get a lot of comments on him. But we're not here to build on the hermit image, but to tell you what hermits are really like. It's important to understand that strange lifestyles and habitats do not a holy hermit make. And it's also important to make a differentiation right here at the beginning. The difference between the word recluse and hermit, or religious solitary.
Big difference, big difference.
Well, in one way, hermits are recluses, but not all recluses are hermits or religious solitaries. A recluse, by definition, is a person who lives apart from society and usually apart from any contact with other people because they don't care for them. A hermit or a religious solitary has chosen to live alone, apart from others, because they do love people, because they want to serve them in a way that they feel is most meaningful and most possible by getting closer to the source of life itself, the life, the source, the sacred one who sustains all of us. In order to do that, they need silence. They need simplicity.
Right.
They need solitude. That's why I would rather describe a hermit by saying what a hermit is than what it is not, what he or she is not. It is better to talk about what they are for than what they are against. So I would like to give you a profile of a genuine hermit as they are today. A Father Eugene Stockton from Australia was interested in hermit life and has now moved into it himself. And he made a trip and a study of hermits that he had contact with in Australia, in New Zealand, and throughout the UK. And when he completed his study, he realized that there were several things that turned up in nearly every hermit that he met. The first, and I think the most important one, was that they all exhibited a very strong sense of a call. Becoming a hermit, a religious solitary, is not something you decide on your own. You are called to it. And he noted that the people were passionate about their call. They were enthusiastic and showed energy. This was not something they did in spite of what they would really want to do. They were excited about the vocation that they had found. He also noticed among them a great sense of self-sufficiency. They were strong within themselves. Although they were very welcoming, he noticed that they had a certain emotional distance from society around them. They weren't too concerned about what other people thought. They had this wonderful sense of autonomy, which means they were who they were within themselves, and that was sufficient. They had their own priorities. They had chosen their lifestyle. And they were not just supporting themselves by being dependent on what other people thought, but living in spite of what other people might think. Father Stockton also noticed a great deal of simplicity, which he defined as a more of a frugality than strict poverty.
Or destitution.
Destitution was not necessarily part of hermit life. I know I struggled against it when I lived in West Virginia. I was very glad to have my cousins come down and mend the roof and put some insulation on the side of the house that I could see light through. And I didn't really think it was a good idea to be able to see through the walls where there were no windows. So destitution wasn't my goal, and I don't think it's the goal of most hermits. Frugality is, and that means having enough, but not more than that. He noticed among them a degree of stillness and silence, and this was manifested even in their posture. They weren't bouncing around, showing all kinds of nervous tension. They were still, they were relaxed and quiet. They were people that listened. They were not ready to interrupt you before you finished saying whatever you were going to say. And And you knew when they were listening with an inner
Yes.
stillness, not just waiting for a chance to butt in and say whatever they were thinking. Interestingly enough, another thing came up. Although they started out with a very radical withdrawal, those hermits who had been living in the solitary life for many years were discovering that people were coming to them because they sensed wisdom and compassion, and people were drawn to them, either because they felt the need to get prayers for something that they were hurting about, or guidance from a person whom they felt could see into their souls and give them true, honest guidance for their decision making.
Mm.
As we consider this foregoing, we're tempted to ask, well, what type of person can become a hermit? What do you think of? Of course, we think of introverts, don't
Yes.
we? People who are loners, shy maybe, who don't like to be around people. Or maybe they're artists or writers who retreat in order to produce something beautiful. This may be true of some hermits, but hermits come in all sizes, shapes, and forms. All kinds of personalities and types can be good hermits. Religious solitaries retreat for a reason as well. They want to develop and deepen their relationship with the divine. And this is true of all kinds of people in all kinds of cultures. It is true of the readership of Ravensbread, as I noted. When we get letters from all places. We get them from people in solitary confinement. We get people who are living in the inner city. We get them from people who are out on the farms looking after animals. I sometimes think of all our different hermits something like all fish swim in water, but not all fish are alike. And they often swim in different kinds of water. We have your rushing mountain streams that one kind of fish does well in. You have your still lakes where other fish develop and grow. Think of the oceans where the great whales will, or the dolphins.
Mm.
They're all in water. They're all fish, but they are not all alike. I would like to share something that one of our readers wrote to us, and I feel we included in our book because it said it so well. Father W. Paul Jones offered this observation. I am particularly fascinated with introvert and extrovert personalities and the hermit life. My life is governed by Trappist spirituality, innately introvert in orientation, and yet I am a vigorous extrovert, in love with people and nature, with living and society, and with history. However, I have come to crave yet more, a radical interiority, not as a place where meaning really is, but more perhaps as a matter of growth by walking into my own shadow. Therefore, I am uneasy about introverts for whom the hermit life can be a rather natural settling into their own self-image in a comfortable manner that doesn't call them to stretch. Coming at the hermit life from any personality type needs to produce a creative discomfort and is at the heart of yearning of reaching beyond one's grasp. So what is necessary to be a hermit? I'd say there are two diagnostic keys: motivation and maturity.
Hmm.
When we did a survey of our readers, we noted that over 2/3 of them, of the 122 respondents, were in their 60s and 70s. And most of these said that they began their hermit life in their 50s. In other words, hermit life is not child's play. It is a midlife calling and a second half of life vocation. In order to live hermit life healthily, you have to have had a lot of experience behind you. We would never recommend somebody in their 20s to become a hermit. They simply have not got the balance that a long time of living and experience can give a person. Midlife crisis then can become a midlife calling or conversion. Sometimes it is rooted in a long-held desire. Other times it is a brand new discovery for them. But as these people, with their balance and their love and their ability to continue growing, as Father Paul said, to be willing to continue stretching, there are some typical attributes that appear. Among them is a childlike joy, where they have learned what Thomas Merton called how to live without care.
Oh, yes.
I didn't say without caring, because they care deeply, but they know how to live without care for themselves. They are free of worry. And worry is one of the things that is a bane in our society today.
The age of anxiety.
Exactly.
We worry about everything.
And we continue to. And another thing that people, as hermits now, are there people who will never stop growing. They will gradually develop more and more balanced personality. We did say they need to start out with some balance, but nobody is at their perfection. Even when we die, we're told there are places we need to move, unfinished business that needs to be continued. And we find among these hermits what I've mentioned before: compassion and wisdom. What is compassion? Compassion is the ability to feel with, to be deep into the heart of other people. The wisdom comes from listening deeply, listening inside themselves to the God voice, listening to the person outside them who is sharing their concerns or their sorrows or their questions, and putting what they hear from both sides together and making some few comments. Usually not many. Hermits ordinarily aren't preachers. When it comes to being a hermit, I think it's easy to say that many are curious, but few are called. And another quote that I love, which I think sums up hermit life, is this: to seek is to be sought. To find is to have been found. And this is where the peace of the hermit comes from. They're not worried about what they must do. They have already been found. And all they have to do is respond to the one who has found them. The true hermitage, no matter where it is a place of peace. Despite the image we see in the stories of the desert fathers who spent night times in combat with demons, those are legends. Most hermits only are fighting their own natures. Beyond that, they are mediating peace to the world. They are mediating it to others, even as they are absorbing their pain. Hermits are not self-enclosed people. They are open to the others. I think that what T.S. Eliot said can be applied to hermits. Our prayer is, teach us to care and not to care. Teach us to sit still.
So to recap a little bit, I think you can see from what Karen has said, hermits are perhaps no more or less strange mentally, emotionally, physically than the general population. Not everybody is balanced in the general population, and among hermits, not everyone is equally balanced either, but not decidedly more. The thing is that hermits live the way they do, in silence, in solitude, and simplicity, not as ends in themselves. That's the important thing to remember. They live that way in order to encounter the ground of their own being, to give to God their full attention. Hermits enter into silence not simply for quiet, but it's in order, especially in our own day and age, with so much chatter, so much noise, day in, day out, with radio, with television, with podcasts, Comcast, every kind of cast you can think of. There's this constant murmur. How can the voice of God get through? We have to enter into the silence so that we can hear the voice of God. And the same holds true for the solitude. Hermits enter into solitude in a pervasive way, not because they just want to be away from people, but in order to make room, space for the presence of God, so that they can relate to God and not be distracted by a lot of other relationships. And again, simplicity. It's not because people just don't care or they're lazy. It's because in our culture that is so focused on the acquisition of material goods and all the care and the concern that goes into maintaining that, hermits want to declutter their lives so that they can be less distracted by all those cares and concerns and attend to the life of prayer, the development of the relationship with the sacred ground of being. The root and the foundation of this way of life is the experience of being called to it. That's what Karen had said. It's not a willy-nilly decision. It's certainly not a little adventure that young people set out on. And this is not a casual call. At least that's not what we have heard from the people that we have related to over the last 16 years who are in this life. It's a call that they found beckoned insistently, one that haunted their dreams and dogged their steps, a call that refused to be ignored and could not be dismissed very easily. In fact, it reminds us very much of Francis Thompson's memorable poem, The Hound of Heaven. Karen, can you give us just a taste of that poem?
Yes, I've loved this poem for a long time. And I've identified with Francis Thompson as he wrote this. I fled him down the days and down the nights. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthian ways of my own mind. And in the midst of tears I hid from him. And under running laughter, up vistaed hopes I sped, and shot precipitate adown titanic glooms of chasmed fears. From those strong feet that followed after, but with unhurrying chase and unperturbed pace, deliberate speed, majestic instancy, they beat, and a voice beat, more instant than the feet. All things betray thee, who betrayest me. Whom wilt thou find to love ignoble thee? Save me, save only me. All which I took from thee, I did but take, not for thy harms, but just that thou mightest seek it in my arms. All of which thy child's mistake fancies as lost, I have but stored for thee at home. Rise, clasp my hand and come. Halts by me that footfall. Is my gloom, after all, shade of his hand outstretched caressingly? Ah, fondest, blindest, weakest, I am he whom thou seekest. Thou dravest love from thee, who dravest me.
It's still as powerful as the same first time I've heard it.
Yes.
Still, answering this call, however, is just the beginning of the journey. And the reason, if you're thinking about it, that we see so few people responding to this call in our world is the risks that such a call involves. We're probably saying the obvious when we say we live in a world that's riddled with so many fears and anxieties. And among the many, one of the biggest is boredom. All we have to do is look at the growth and the pervasiveness of the entertainment industry, whose sole capital is providing excitement. They'll do anything to prevent us from getting bored. But you know, if a person avoids boredom at all costs, if they're not willing to ever risk boredom, they'll never enter into authentic silence. The experience of boredom is not one that many people in our modern culture care to risk.
What do the teenagers always say when they want to put something down? Boring.
Another one of the great fears of our culture is loneliness.
Yeah.
When we think of all of the media methods of people connecting with other people, loneliness is one of the biggest fears, separation from others. And again, unless a person is willing to risk the experience of loneliness, they will never move into genuine solitude. One must be willing to risk entering into that experience of loneliness in order to actually move into solitude. Solitude is not isolation. In fact, it's only in solitude that one can recover true relationship. Unfortunately, not many want to risk the loneliness that this involves initially.
I found that that was true when I moved into my little cabin in West Virginia. I sat there and I expected that God would overwhelm me with light and love. And all I felt was myself alone. And believe me, it was scary. It took time to just be there and go through it. It's only as you go through the loneliness that you will find the relationship you're looking for. And I found that every time I had to leave my hermitage for a day or two and came back, I would have to go through this same experience. Although after I learned about it, I came to expect it, and I was a little more comfortable. It's like getting on an elevator and the door closes and you're alone, and it starts going down. Finally, there comes a moment when you hit the right floor, the door opens, and you have recovered that sense of relationship that you're looking for.
Good way to look at it. And the last point is that one of the other things our society today cannot bear is insecurity. You witness the growth of the insurance industry. We insure everything, even our pets. In our consumer society that's driven by acquisition and control, unless a person is willing to risk material insecurity, they'll never be able to experience the freedom from care and obsession. They'll never know the contentment of a simple living and the dependence on providence. We want to invite you tonight, if you want to hear from hermits themselves about this very experience and the growth that they have undergone over the years, we invite you simply to request a sample copy of our quarterly newsletter. Let me hold it up for you right there. Mm-hmm. Our quarterly newsletter, Ravenspread, by contacting us at www.ravenspreadministries.com. You can receive one by email, and you can receive one by the postal service from just about anywhere in the world. In the remaining time that we have this evening, Karen and I would like to focus in a more meditative way on this relationship that the hermits seek to develop with the divine. For the Jewish community, this week marks Passover. For Christians, this is Holy Week, and their focus is the sacred tree of the cross upon which Jesus was sacrificed. Trees have, since the dawn of history, figured prominently in sacred symbology and iconography. One thinks of the mighty oak that is sacred to the nature religions of Northern Europe, or the Bodhi, the sacred fig under which the Buddha achieved enlightenment, or perhaps the great pine tree guarding the Iroquois nation in North America. Or maybe the cedars of Lebanon come to mind, or the olive tree. Well, Karen would like to lead us this evening in a guided imagery called the God Tree. It's an easy way to perceive how we are relating to God at this moment in our lives. It can also show us how we feel about ourselves and how important others are to us right now. Karen?
Yes. As we prepare for this time of meditative prayer, Paul will light a light for us. We light this light In the name of the one who creates life. In the name of the Savior who loves life. In the name of the Spirit who is the fire of life. In order to pray well, we need to relax. Assume a comfortable position wherever you are. If the environment around you permits, loosen any tight clothing. Kick off your shoes. Sit back and begin to take a few deep breaths, which will help with the relaxing process. If thoughts come, and generally the day's cares do come to mind, acknowledge them and then just gently let them go. Breathe at a slow, comfortable pace. Direct your attention to your breathing for a few moments. And now we will begin. Imagine yourself in summer, somewhere out of doors. It might be a place familiar to you, or it might not. But the weather is pleasant. You are alone. You like being alone there. Find yourself in this pleasant outdoor place in summer. As you are enjoying being alone out of doors, you begin to realize something. Anything is possible, you know, in imagination. So, gently, you become aware that God is appearing to you. He is appearing to you as a tree. A tree is God. Let that tree slowly come into focus for you. What kind of tree is your God tree? How does it look? Perhaps something is going on around it. If there is, what is happening around your God tree? As you are noticing your God tree, you slowly and gently become aware that you are a tree. What kind of tree are you? Let it come to you. Let it come into focus. What is your tree like? Where is it in relation to the God tree? Perhaps something is going on in or near your tree. If so, what is happening around your tree? Are there any other trees near you or the God tree? Are there any other trees in sight? Maybe yes, maybe no. But if so, what are they like? Is anything happening near them? Slowly now, I ask you to let yourself come out of this imagery. Let your mental pictures slowly fade. Come back to the room where you are. If you want to yawn or stretch, do so. People often like to do that after an image experience. Then wait a few moments. If possible, verbalize to yourself what has happened. Make a few notes. Hearing it spoken or writing it down will have another impact on you, valuable in its own way. It is also valuable to share your experience with someone. Important questions to consider when you remember your imagery. What kind of tree was the God tree? What might that mean to you? What kind of association have you with that kind of tree? What was the condition of the tree? Healthy? Barren? Fruitful? Dead? Was it alone? Far? Or near? Was it hospitable to the birds, animals, people, aloof? What might these answers mean to you? And now consider, what kind of tree were you? And what might that mean to you? What kind of association have you with that kind of tree? What was the condition of my tree? Healthy? Barren? Fruitful? Dead? Was it alone? Near the God tree? Near anything? Was it hospitable to the birds, the animals, people? Was it aloof? Was it deserted? How did you feel about seeing my tree so situated? And were there any other trees nearby? How were they? healthy, barren, fruitful, dead, helpful, threatening? Were they friendly or aloof? What? What feeling did you associate with them? As I mentioned before, imageries can assume a variety of shapes and forms, and there is no one right fantasy. In even a limited group of people, there will be widely diverse images. We have some experiences from other people who have done this, and we also have done it, and which we would like to share with you next time. We were wondering if some of our viewers might wish to share some of their experience.
Sure. And you can do that by simply going on the website, and you can contact us either by email, that's probably the most effective way to do it, is send us an email. And in addition to the insights that other people have shared with us from having done this exercise, we'll include yours. If you prefer to remain anonymous, certainly we will respect that. But maybe we'll devote some time to that next week when we come together. For now, in the silence of our hearts, or in whatever way that we are moved from where we are, let us pray, give thanks for the day that this has been for us, and pray for the life of the world. In the darkness of the evening, the eyes of our hearts are awake to you. In the quiet of the night, we long to hear again intimations of your love. In the sufferings of the world and the struggles of our lives, we seek your graces of healing. At the heart of the brokenness around us, and in the hidden depths of our souls, we seek your touch of healing, Most Holy One. For there you reside. In the hidden depths of our lives, O God, there you reside. O gracious God, you have given us eyes to see with, and ears to hear life's sounds and sorrows, and yet our seeing and our hearing, like our tasting and touching, are wounded and weakened by failures. As rest can heal the sores of a body, and sleep restores its strength, so may your angel of grace visit us in the night, that the senses of our souls may be born afresh. We beg you to visit our dreams with messengers of grace, O God, that the senses of our souls may be born again. Once again, we want to take this opportunity to say how pleased we are that Brother Sean has invited us to spend this time with you. And we want to add our deep and genuine gratitude to David Holmes, whose generous assistance in helping us to prepare this has made it really possible for us. Thank you.
We would also like to remind you once again of how you can get in touch with us. Our website is ravensbreadministries.com. On that website, you can find various ways to contact us. Our email address is pkfredette@frontier.com. You could also type in a brief message in the chat box if you have that capability from where you are. And I want to say too, I am thrilled to have this opportunity to share these hours with you.
The blessings of heaven, the blessings of earth, the blessings of sea and of sky, on those we love this night, and on every human family. The gifts of heaven, the gifts of earth, the gifts of sea and sky. Thank you all, and God bless you. Good night.